We start the video off in Bebington, at the church that I go to, called the Way Biblical Fellowship. The concept and the idea behind the video is to show you what it was like, stage by stage, step by step, to go from Bebington to Texas to celebrate Sukkot, which is a biblical feast day with congregation in America. And also the idea behind it was to show the people from America that are part of the congregation that have never been to the UK what it was like to travel from the UK to America for Sukkot, and what an amazing adventure it was and an amazing experience. I hope that you enjoy it. At this point, we've made it through security, everything's good, and we're just waiting to get on the plane. So the plane was on time, everything was good, and we're setting off. Obviously, with it being Manchester, it was raining. What I did like, as the plane took off, as you can see here, the wind and the rain, it cleared from the window, and that was the end of the bad weather for the next 2.5 weeks, because we're going to Texas, and Texas was warm, and we never saw one drop of rain. I did a few little clips here. The one on the right is a little bit of turbulence that we went through. Nothing major, very light really. It was I think it was about 10-15 minutes where we just had to wear our seatbelts, but nothing big. I went to Texas last year for Sukkot, and that was the first time that I'd ever been on a plane. So obviously the second time was coming back, so this was the third time that I'd ever been on a plane, and I wanted to make sure that I got a window seat so I could lap up the full experience. And here in the video, the plane is turning to go onto the runway, and it makes, do you know when your stomach goes woof? So that was what was happening at this point. So we're landing in Houston, Texas, and then we were going to be doing a road trip up to where we were staying. So this is landing. It was a little bit of a jerky landing.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Houston.
So we made it and we got into security, and security queue was big, very big. So good job, I packed light. At the time that I went, it was late September last year, and I was still running the car company at that point. So I needed to bring quite a bit of luggage to incorporate everything that I still needed to do in America to make that happen. We went from England, which was cold, to stepping into Houston, Texas, which was like an oven. So it was a big shock to the system. We got on the bus here, air conditioned at least, and then we went to pick up the rental truck. And I love trucks, big fat American SUVs. So we got this, rode up the motorway, well, you call it the freeway, and then we went to Texas Roadhouse to have some steaks. These were the biggest steaks that I'd seen in my life, and we both had them. Beautiful, had all the compliments, the bread, starters, the full works. And then we went to the Airbnb. This was in the morning. We'd arrived in Houston and we were heading north. What we decided to do was stay in Lufkin at the Airbnb, which was about 2 hours drive from Houston, Texas. So as you can see, the Airbnb was quite messy. It had been a long day. Got up early because we were still both on UK time, which is 6 hours in front. It was just one night in this particular Airbnb, but before we left, we made sure it was tidy. So everything is exactly how we left it when we arrived. Spot on. We headed north up the motorway freeway to Longview, which was about 2 hours drive, and we were staying in an Airbnb. From Tuesday onwards, Charlie was staying in Jefferson and I was staying in Longview at a different Airbnb, but just for one night we treated ourselves to a really good Airbnb that had outside baths, sauna. She was such a lovely host. It was such a lovely property where we stayed. Again, at this point we were still on UK time, so we got up early in the morning and went to the gym, and then we went to an American diner. It was called Miss Minnie's, and we got a burger and chips. It was some of the best burger and chips that I'd had. It was absolutely amazing. Charlie is a hat connoisseur. He loves hats. He's renowned for his hats, and he was looking for hat shops. So he found a place which was a good place, and he took me there, and I was lucky enough to get a new hat. This is the burger place. Beautiful.
Yeah, but we're going camping in about is it Monday?
Yeah.
We'll go camping on Monday. We keep a biblical feast called Sukkot. So we camp out for 8 days, and we're commanded to rejoice.
Yes, sir.
Here we go, I'm in my new hat, which I was very, very pleased about. I thought it looked amazing. So I dropped Charlie off at his Airbnb, as you can see there, and I went to my Airbnb, and what happened was I got a bug bite, and I spoke to the lady whose place that I was staying at, and she advised me to go to A&E to get it looked at, and they put me on a drip for antibiotics. Looking back in hindsight, it was a massive overreaction. I should never have gone. I should have just popped it. And I was actually plagued by bug bites the entire time, in a way that I wasn't last time I came. But anyway, so we arrived at the campground. That's me unpacking the stuff, and me, Charlie, and Keith went to Juicy Burger and got a huge burger. It was massive. I put this train in because when we went to Texas, the trains seemed to never end. You go to a train crossing and you just go and go and go and go and go. Very long trains. Well, they do say everything's bigger in Texas, and that's certainly true with the trains. So we were staying at a lake. This is the lake that we were staying at. It was like paradise. You got into the water, and the water was warm. There was a current, as you can see from the waves. It was just a beautiful place to be. Coming from Northern England to a place like that, it was out of this world. You can see the sunset was amazing. The bugs are certainly bigger in Texas. You can look at the light. No wonder I got bitten so badly. Look at that. And that's some of the rejoicing that we were doing on the night. This is another view of the same sunset, but from the lake. So it's Sunday morning. Keith, he's a bad influence. Cookie dough whiskey. Wow. It tasted like I was drinking cookies. Unbelievable. 5:30 I think we went to bed. It's like 9:30 in the morning now. I've got to go and pick Karina up. What a night. Legs have been annihilated, mate. I've been bitten so bad. I've never had bites like this before. All the other families started to arrive, and Jeff, who was a wood chopping machine, showed us how to do it.
I got a wide stance, kind of bend at the knees, and I bring this back and then full. But when I swing, you don't want to focus your mind that you're hitting here. You want to pretend that you have to hit this one.
Okay.
Because you'll feel the impact and you'll kind of let up.
It's not entering.
But when you swing, you don't want to swing like this, so it'll come back to you. You want to swing and keep that blade flat. You know what I mean? Because you don't want it coming back
Yeah.
to you. So you want to hit right there and split it right now. Easy. It's pretty wet.
It'll snap it back a lot of the
Yeah.
Or it just won't burn.
Really weird, eh? Right. Get cocky now. Yes!
In a few hours it'll go dark. When it does, the evening of the first day will begin and Sukkot will start. I've left timestamps in the video, so if it's not your cup of tea, you can skip ahead, but Charlie is going to explain why we celebrate Sukkot.
And of course, we're here today so that we can be sanctified by the word, by the truth, and that by walking in the truth, we become one. And what an incredible blessing it is. And we've got a Messiah who says, I want them to see my glory, and this is something that we look forward to. And of course, this feast that we keep points to the day that is coming when we will get to celebrate with our Messiah, which is pretty amazing, isn't it? So, let's read a little bit from Leviticus 23 and the commandment that brings us all together today. Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of the 7th month, and for 7 days, is the Feast of Booths to Yehovah. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. For 7 days you shall present food offerings to Yehovah. On the 8th day you shall hold a holy convocation and present a food offering to Yehovah. It is a solemn assembly. You shall not do any ordinary work. These are the appointed feasts of Yehovah, which you shall proclaim as times of holy convocation, for presenting to Yehovah food offerings, burnt offerings, and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its proper day, besides Yehovah's Sabbaths, besides your gifts, and besides all your vow offerings, besides all your free will offerings which you give to Yehovah. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the produce of your land, you shall celebrate the feast of Yehovah 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of splendid trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before Jehovah your God for 7 days. You shall celebrate it as a feast to Jehovah for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when they brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah your God. Thus Moshe declared to the people of Israel the appointed feasts of Jehovah. And part of what we do when we meet together on the first day is we go and we collect some leafy boughs. We have a little walk, and it gives everybody a chance to get to know each other and just chill out. Before we do all that, Jeff Van Duzen asked me to point out there's a sign near where he's camped saying that there's been alligators spotted. So if the children want to watch out, it just says simple things like don't stroke them if they come up to you, or feed them chickens, I believe is what it says. Yeah.
Like Charlie was saying, there were signs saying that there were alligators in the lake. Some people said there weren't alligators in the lake. Other people that were more local to the place said it was highly likely there were alligators in there. But I never saw any. And if there were, they stayed well away from all humans. There was a dam at the end of the lake, which should potentially have stopped them getting in, but it doesn't mean that they did. Anyway, so with the first day, it was a high Sabbath, so that meant that there was no work, and we were commanded to rejoice. So what we did, we met up at the communal tent, we went for a lovely walk, and then we went back, played some games, had a chat, got to know everybody. It was an amazing day, absolutely brilliant. And as you can see from the video, the weather was amazing as well. As part of my mission to eat as many different burgers as possible, the next day I went to Chick-fil-A. So I'm having my first Chick-fil-A. Got my milkshake as well. Let's hope it's better than Burger King. So this is my tent setup. This is where I cook my food. I brought my laptop. Like I said, I really packed light, didn't I? A few beverages, steak, bread, eggs. I ate real well while I was here. These are all the people that were close to me. Obviously, I had a weight bench, I had weights. I needed to make myself as comfortable as possible. The following day, I went on a little mission around the lake. I wanted to see what it was about, so I went on a solo trip just to see where all the different paths led. In the evening, I went to the other side of the lake to film the sunset. The following bit that's coming up is the baptisms, and Charlie explains why baptisms are important. I got baptised here last year. It was one of the most special days of my life. Like I said, I have time-stamped the video, so if that's not your cup of tea, you can skip ahead on it, and vice versa as well. If the baptisms are important, you can use the timestamps to come back to them at any time.
Just a few words. Just to explain what baptism is very briefly. I'm going to read from Romans 6, and I'm going to ask Jeff to pray, and then the third person to step up, and we will go in. So, baptism is an appeal for a clear conscience before the Lord God. It's a way of saying, I completely surrender. I die to self. I submit to you. I am yours. And if we read in Romans 6, it explains it much better than I did. What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it? Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Yeshua HaMashiach were baptized into his death? We were buried therefore with him by baptism into death, in order that, just as the Messiah was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too might walk in newness of life. But if we've been united with him in a death like his, we shall certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. We know that our old self was crucified with him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to sin. The one who has died has been set free from sin. Now, if we have died with the Messiah, we believe that we will also live with him. And we know that Messiah, being raised from the dead, will never die again. Death no longer has dominion over him. For the death he died to sin once for all. But the life he lives to God. So you also must consider yourselves dead to sin and alive to God in Yeshua HaMashiach. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body to make you obey its passions. Do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those who've been brought from death to life, and your members to God as instruments for righteousness. But sin will have no dominion over you, so you are not under law but under grace. Now, do you think that I think it's an amazing thing, baptism, and it always makes me happy. I think it's a really significant event in somebody's life.
footage here is from a communal feast that we had where everybody brought some food. I must have put on about 4 or 5 pounds just in this day alone. It was unbelievable the amount of food that I ate. It was worth it. Part of the novelty of camping in Texas was that we was allowed to have a large campfire every night once it went dark. So in the evening of the last day before it went dark, we lit a large fire. This is the large fire. And basically, right at the end of the night, about 3 in the morning, I managed to trip up and fall in the fire, and I burnt my hand and my arm quite badly. It was my own daft fault. It was just stupidity. The next morning, when I was awake, I tripped up in the same fire pit when it was completely light. So I was going to trip up anyway, but I was just too close to the fire and I went in. I had some to drink, but I don't think that made a major difference. But I went in. Anyway, as a consequence of that, on the last day, because all the skin was peeling off my arm and my hand, I didn't film a lot. So what I did is I took a montage of all the pictures that everybody put in the Sukkot picture group to show you what it was like on the last day. There's some pictures that ain't from the last day, but the majority of them were from the last day. The trip was absolutely amazing. I went there lean, very lean, and I think I put on about 14 pounds, maybe a little bit more by the time I got back to the UK. So on the last day, my plan was the next day, the following day, was to go back to the airport, which was a 4-hour drive. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to do before the drive, so I had to get up at 3 in the morning when it was pitch black, and I had to drive to JP's before I went to the airport. So when I got up in the morning, obviously I was suffering because of my hand. I could only use one hand, and then I turned all the lights on the SUV, and what happened was a million flies and bugs all went in the SUV, absolutely everywhere. I'd never seen anything like it. I couldn't get them out. I had to drive to the airport, which was a huge drive. It was like a 6-hour drive in total with all these flies and bugs in the rental car. It was unbelievable, as well as having all the skin hanging off my arm. So it wasn't an ideal way to finish the trip, but it doesn't matter. It just made it difficult. I had to leave the camp before it went light, so that was part of it that made it undesirable to leave at that time. Anyway, so this is the same day. It went light. All the bugs went eventually, well, most of them. And this is just before we got to the airport. And was filling up the higher SUV at the petrol station, and basically I saw this van at the side of the road selling Mexican food. It was the nicest, hottest Mexican food that I'd ever had. It was absolutely beautiful. And then we got to the airport super early, so we just waited around for ages. And we got on the plane. This part of the footage here, like I said, my head wasn't in the best state because I was in shock because of my arm, and I just forgot how to film footage so the horizon looked normal as it was taking off. But I had no other footage, so I wanted to put this in anyway. So that's us setting off. I'm going to reassess how much weight I actually put on. I don't think it was 14 pounds. I think it was probably 18 pounds. I think it was like a stone and a half of weight that I put on by the time I got back. I went from 11 stone to 12 and a half stone when I got home. But it was a successful flight. It didn't stop me eating that meal on the way home. I tried a McDonald's as well on the way to the airport. I had some chocolate on the plane. I just went crazy basically. And then we're nearly home. This is just getting back into England, back to the miserable cold weather. It was a shock to the system to go from Texas heat to October English weather. But we landed, we made it. And I went straight to the outpatient to get my hand treated. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to give you a real experience of what it was like to go to Texas for Sukkot. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.